Hello, my group is Sarah Macias, David Gonzalez, and I, Denise Quintero, and our teaching strategy is number 37, Microselection, finding key and main ideas in math.
Strategy number 37, microselection, focuses on students gaining the ability to identify main ideas and keywords in individual sentences, which will lead to the students having the skill to identify keywords and main ideas in longer passages. Mastering this skill will allow students to retain information better and understand the meaning of their readings. Because of microselection, students also gain the skill needed to paraphrase readings rather than feeling the need to memorize them while not actually comprehending what they read. Learning to paraphrase comes from students also learning how to prioritize information. Microselection also provides students the opportunity to identify words that they have little to no understanding of. Students are offered many resources including dictionaries, internet access, teachers, and peers. Our book states that microselection is done at the sentence level and practiced in several ways before it is expanded into finding the main idea in paragraphs and whole passages, which I will explain further in our next slide of step by step. The first step to microselection is to introduce the concept of microselection to the class. This means that teachers would explain to the students the importance of understanding the words that form a sentence in order to understand the sentence as a whole. This will allow the students to understand that in order to be able to talk about what they read, they should understand exactly what they read. The next step to microselection is to model the identification of key words. This means that a teacher would read a sentence from a reading selection provided to the classroom, and they would demonstrate how by remembering the key words, you can restate the sentence by keeping the meaning without saying it exactly as it was written. The third step to microselection is to guide students in practicing microselection. This means that the teacher will have a student read a sentence, identify important words, and then explaining the meaning of the sentence without repeating how it was written. Teachers should practice this exercise with several students until a majority of the class demonstrates understanding of the concept. The next step is to pair students for additional practice. Ideally, you wouldn't want to pair up two students who are weak readers or two struggling English learners. During this practice, one student will be identifying key terms and the second student will be explaining the meaning and restating the sentence. During this practice, students should be alternating roles. Teachers should take advantage of this practice period to provide guided practices for those who need the additional support. After the practice period is over, the next step is to discuss the procedure. This means that you would bring the class back together and ask the students in each pair to share the keywords they identified. At this moment, the teacher can ask for the rest of the class's input and see who got the same answer and who got a different answer and give them the chance to explain why. The final step to microselection is to assess, to identify the need for additional instruction or guided practice. Meaning, after having observed the students throughout the initial lesson, the guided practice, and the sharing process, one should be able to identify those who might need more instruction. It's recommended to place reading passages in a learning center and ask students to list keywords for each passage, sentence by sentence. By using the result of this activity, you can determine who will need more instruction. This is such an important skill to master that teachers should enforce extra practice until the students demonstrate true understanding of the concept. This slide is to guide us into pairing students off into groups or partners. As mentioned, step by step, there's ways to pair students. There's the pre-production, the early production, speech emergence, intermediate fluency, and fluent. This chart portrays the student that we are pairing our EL student with. Using this chart allows us to pair our students wisely. We can assign our EL students to one who can provide support in the first language, another who can help with the pronunciation of the English main ideas, another who can repeat the sentences that contain the main ideas as well as the summary sentences, another who is a strong English student, and lastly, a fluent English learner, which can serve as partners for students less proficient in English. They can be helpful in providing first language interpretations as well. The approximation behavior chart determines by grade level where students will use microselection in. Grades pre-K through 3rd will identify key words in oral readings, state the main idea of simple paragraphs. Grades 4th through 8th will identify keywords in paragraphs they've read, use the keywords to write a main idea statement for a paragraph they have read. And grades 9th through 12th use keywords to take notes in academic class, state main ideas for academic text.
Our activity standard is for 2nd grade, and it is 208A1. Use addition and subtraction within 100 to solve 1 and 2-step word problems involving situations of adding to, taking from, putting together, taking apart, and comparing, with unknown in all positions.
So now we're going to be going into our step-by-step activity, 1-step, 2-step teamwork. So with step 1, students will first be giving a worksheet with practice word problems. So this is something that the students will do together with the teacher as a whole class. And then 2 teachers will read aloud and break down word problems on the board with students. So with the practice word problems that they're given, the teacher will go down the list of the worksheet and write these sentences down on the board and be able to break them down into their each separate sentences per word problem. So some word problems maybe have 3 parts to it, maybe some have 2, and just to be able to break those up will really help them find the key parts of these word problems. Moving down to step 3, problems will be broken down in different colors for better understanding for students. So say the first sentence may be red, the second sentence blue, and the last one yellow. So this just really helps students figure out how to separate where one key point starts, ends, and then another one starts, ends. So it just really helps them so that they can figure out which parts of the word problem are key components that they need, where they need to add, they need to subtract. Moving down to step 4, once practice worksheet is complete, teacher will then separate students into groups of 3. So that just gives the students a chance to work on it with their own thoughts and with the thoughts of their teammates, so that they can be able to work together and just put their own ideas in how they would figure out these word problems, or what works best for them when they're figuring out these word problems. Moving on to step 5, students will first be given counters and blocks to guide them with the word problems, along with one dry erase board per group. So for the counters and the blocks, it's similar to the colors, where it's just another way to help them be able to break down these word problems. Not all students may use them. Some will really use them and really like them, and it really helps them. It just depends on the student, and it just gives them more resources to be able to find solutions for these word problems. And the dry erase board is going to be per group, because moving down to step 6, students will come up with their group name for the activity. So each group is going to have their own group name, just so that they know that they're a team and they're going to work on these together, and it'll just make the whole activity a little more fun, and they'll enjoy learning the material. Moving down to step 7, word problems will be then projected on the screen to work in their groups. So each word problem will be given separately, not all of them at the same time. So they will be given the first one, and they will be given a certain amount of time to be able to work out these word problems in their groups using counters, blocks, colors if need be. And once the time's up, students will raise their whiteboards, and the groups who got it correct will earn 1 point. So once they come to the conclusion in their group, they'll write that on the little whiteboards and put it up, and it just gives them more incentive when you just give them points, because they feel more want to learn. They want to learn. They want those points. They want to try really hard to gain those points. Moving down to 10, to wrap up, teachers will ask students for understanding for any questions they might have before continuing on to the quiz, the review quiz. So this is just, say if students still had questions, say on the first problem that they were given, they just didn't fully grasp it. This is a chance for them to be able to go back and fully understand what they were doing when they were working on their problems in their groups. So moving down to step 11, students will work on a lesson review quiz individually to check for understanding. So this is just really to see how each one of your students is doing and how they're fully grasping and understanding these word problems, and just the process overall and how they're setting up these word problems, breaking them down, figuring out a solution, but without that group environment, being able to do it on their own. Moving on to our next slide. So this is going to be the worksheet that we're going to hand out to all of the students at the beginning of the activity. This is going to be the worksheet that is going to be worked on as a whole class. So I'll go ahead and read the first problem, which is Kendra drew 5 pictures. She threw 2 pictures away. How many pictures did she keep? So we went ahead and underlined the first key part of the sentence, which is drew 5 pictures. So we underlined that in pink. And then we move to the next key part of the sentence, which is threw 2 pictures away. So that's another key point of this word problem. So after that, we go ahead and draw it. So we draw 5 little circles, for those are the 5 original pictures that Kendra drew. And then we cross out 2 in blue, which is what is underlined through 2 pictures away. So that just helps students understand with visuals, and that's very important with ELL learners because they're able to pick up on information by seeing visuals. So that's a great way to be able to show students and break it down for them. So when we put the answer, we put it in a different color, which is 3. Then we go ahead and there's another section to the word problem, and this is then Kendra drew 7 more pictures. How many pictures does she have now? So we go ahead and we draw the original that we have, the 3 that was left over after we did the subtraction problem. Then we draw the 3 little circles in the green color. And in the sentence, we underline the key part, 7 more pictures. And one of the key words being more. So that is meaning addition. So then we draw 7 more little circles in the color yellow, which shows another part of the word problem. So we go ahead and draw it, and it's 3 plus 7, and then we come to the conclusion that it's 10. So this is just a great way to be able to break this up for students and ELL students, mostly because they're great with visuals. They love to see visuals because it's something that they're able to understand more than words themselves. So if they are able to see these colors and see what's going on, it's easier for them to understand, and they're more willing to want to learn the material. So now moving on to the theoretical overview, I'm going to go ahead and read the quote. Teachers implementing Common Core standards are expected to raise student interactions to include requiring that students explain the process they use to obtain answers in mathematics, as well as strategies they use in solving problems or reading for understanding. So this really relates back to our lesson plan, because our lesson plan 1 relates to mathematics, and also it's about students being able to find these key points, main ideas in these sentences and be able to break them apart and find these answers to solve these problems. It's very important for students to know how they are breaking down these problems and figuring out solutions to be able to solve them and the strategies that they're using. And the more that they're able to practice these strategies of breaking down and figuring out the process it took them to solve these equations, they're able to take that with them into their further education when they learn more material with math and they know how to break down the process and understand how they're getting these answers and solving these problems, because it just makes it so much easier because they know what they're doing. Instead of just memorizing certain things, they figure out the process, they know what they're doing, they take those steps, they work on those strategies, and they're able to find these answers. And this is especially important for ELL students, because if they're able to explain how they broke down these problems and the process that it took them and the strategies that they use, they're able to keep using that not only for math problems, but for literature or anything else like that. They're able to know the process of learning and how they learn new material, and they can take that further with them when learning the language.
In conclusion, microselection offers students the ability to identify main ideas and key elements to understand a passage, or, for instance, in our lesson plan, math, word problems. So, as a teacher, you need to understand that students, in order for them to correctly determine main ideas, they they have to go through microselection, because microselection does help the students identify main ideas and also will help EL students with learning new vocabulary, because with microselection, students will select those words that they do not understand, and through the process and guided practice, they will learn new words. Also, microselection also helps students work in partners and groups, and this will also help the teacher have a discussion in the classroom, and with the discussion it will help students understand what's going on in the classroom, such as the content and material for students to understand.